Coffee smells like burnt sugar in the corner shop, the kind that sticks to your sleeves if you linger too long. The guy at the counter never notices when someone shifts their cup a little closer, but she does. She notices the way the lid tilts, the way a thumb brushes the rim. "You always get the same thing," she says, almost a statement, not a question. Her voice has that quiet amusement that makes it feel like she's letting him in on a private joke. "Yeah," he says, fumbling with the sleeve. "Habit, I guess." She smiles, a slow tilt of her head, and the kind of small smile that shouldn't matter, but does. She folds her hands over the counter, and he catches the glance she gives to his. It's just a moment, a little flicker, too small to last, too persistent to ignore. The routine is simple. He comes here most mornings, early enough that the chairs are empty, the world just starting. He likes the quiet, the chance to not talk if he doesn't want to. And most mornings, she's there either reading or scribbling in a notebook. Today, she's scribbling again, glancing up only once when the door chimes. "Missed you yesterday," she says, like it's no big deal. But it lingers in the air anyway. He laughs, a little awkward, because he doesn't know what to say. He hadn't realized she noticed. He shuffles his cup from hand to hand, and in the silence, the way the steam curls reminds him of mornings he spent alone in his apartment, the ones with unsent texts waiting in the drafts folder, the ones where he paused mid-step just staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would notice if he stayed like that forever. "You want your usual?" she asks, like she can read the thoughts he didn't type, didn't speak. "Yeah. Thanks," he says. He watches her hands, long fingers tapping the counter while she waits for the barista. She doesn't know it, but he notices the small movements, the way she shifts weight from one foot to the other, the tilt of her head when she hums softly to herself. He wonders if she feels the same undercurrents. Probably not. She probably doesn't even realize the way he watches, the way he waits for a pause just so he can catch that small spark in her eye. It's not loud. It's not obvious. It's like the clock ticking behind the cafe wall, barely there, but impossible to ignore. When she leans over to grab her coffee, he notices the scent, warm, faintly spicy, and how it mixes with the steam curling from the cup. It makes him want to say something stupid, like, "You always smell like this," but he doesn't. Instead, he just nods, mutters, "Looks good," and watches her turn. She leaves before he can think of more to say, a small wave, and he folds his napkin neatly, watches it happen like a rehearsal he didn't ask for. He thinks about the voicemail he didn't send last night, the pause in the conversation he'd replayed too many times. And then, ping. His phone lights up with a message. Not from anyone he expected. Her name. "I like boys who knock at midnight." He blinks, heart stuttering, and the world outside the cafe window feels both too big and too small. A chill crawls up his spine. Midnight isn't for hours, but the thought of it, the weight behind that little sentence, lingers. He stuffs his hand in his pocket, staring at the screen. And for the first time in a long while, he wonders if being late, being reckless, might be exactly what he's been waiting for. He meets her at the corner bookstore, the one with the crooked sign and that faint smell of old paper. She's leaning on the counter, flipping through a cookbook like she doesn't care who's watching. "Did you ever cook anything from these?" he asks, trying to sound casual. "Once," she says, glancing at him with that small, knowing smile. "Disaster. Pasta everywhere, smoke alarm screaming. Thought I'd never try again." He laughs quietly, and there's a pause, the kind where words hang but don't weigh. He notices the way her fingers linger on the page, how she taps lightly on the spine, not out of impatience but habit. "I burned toast this morning," he admits, because it's harmless and he wants to say something, anything. "Coffee spilled. Felt like the whole day would be ruined." She tilts her head, a soft chuckle. Small disasters make for good stories. There's something unspoken in that exchange, something heavier than cookbook disasters or spilled coffee. He thinks about the risks. She's his friend's mom. She's divorced, lives alone in that quiet apartment near the river. And he's 22, fumbling through a life that feels too big for him. Every glance carries an extra weight. Every smile, a question he doesn't want to answer. They wander the aisles together, just far enough to brush shoulders occasionally. Each accidental touch makes his chest tighten in a way that feels both thrilling and guilty. He imagines scenarios he knows he shouldn't, what it would be like if rules didn't exist, if consequences didn't matter. But the imagination feels more like a warning than a temptation. At the counter, she lets him reach for a tin of tea, just brushing his fingers as she hands it over. The contact is brief but enough. He stares at her hands, wondering if she notices his pause, the slight hesitation before he steps back. She sets the tea on the table in the small cafe attached to the bookstore. Steam curls lazily from the cup. He sits opposite her, and for a moment, neither of them speaks. He watches her sip, the way her eyes close just slightly, the small crease near the corner of her mouth. "I used to write letters," she says quietly, almost to herself. "Not emails. Letters. People forget the weight of waiting for something you hope for." He nods, pretending not to feel the sting. He thinks about unsent texts, about messages saved in drafts that will never be read, about silent wishes pressed into words no one will see. A comfortable silence stretches between them, not empty but weighted, almost electric. He notices the subtle cues, the tilt of her cup toward him, the way she brushes a strand of hair behind her ear. He says something small, almost too soft, and she laughs gently, not loudly, just enough to reach him. As she gathers her things to leave, their hands brush again, slightly longer this time. Not accidental, but not declared. A spark hidden inside a gesture that says more than either of them will admit. He watches her go, holding the warmth of that brief contact, the echo of her words, and the tiny pulse of a feeling that's forbidden, fragile, and far from over. He sees her at the grocery store, leaning over the produce, checking tomatoes with that careful tilt of her head. He wants to say something, anything, small talk, a joke, but the words get stuck somewhere between his chest and his throat. "Hey," he manages, voice low, like it might carry too far. She glances up, startled for a moment, then smiles. Not the same easy smile as before, something tempered, cautious. He notices the shift immediately. "You picked the same ones yesterday," he says, trying to break the quiet. "Did I?" Her laugh is lighter than before, but it doesn't reach her eyes fully. She straightens, moves a step back. Guess habits die hard. He watches her, the familiar warmth of her presence suddenly edged with distance. Something unspoken hovers. He wants to bridge it but isn't sure how. At the checkout, he reaches for the same magazine she picked up, pretending. Fingers brush. Just a second, but enough to make his pulse quicken. She doesn't flinch, just lets it happen, but her hand lingers on the counter, not his. Not yet. Outside, they walk to their cars together. He wants to ask her to grab coffee, even for a minute. But there's that pause, the one that holds all the warnings. His chest feels tight, like he's inhaling too much, holding it back. "You're busy?" he asks, hesitant, twisting the strap of his bag. "Somewhat," she says. Pauses. Watches him. "You?" He shrugs, unsure if she means literally or if she's testing him. He wants to tell her he's not busy, that he could stay here forever. He wants to tell her that seeing her like this, simple and everyday, makes him feel alive in ways he shouldn't. But the words never form. A friend walks past, calls his name, and the spell breaks. She straightens instantly, smooths her hair, and he notices her eyes flick to the passing figure, alert, aware, pulling back. He hates it, loves it, all at once. They pause by the cars, the hum of the street filling the silence. He wants to reach out, to hold the moment longer. She tilts her head, a faint smile, like she knows exactly what he wants but isn't giving it. You should go, she says, softly, almost a suggestion, almost a warning. He nods, words failing. He watches her lean slightly closer, the scent of her coat brushing against him, almost inviting, almost forbidden. He imagines the space between them disappearing, hands brushing, lips hovering, but stops. Hesitates. Her eyes drop briefly, then meet his again. Something flickers there, something unsaid, electric, dangerous. And for a heartbeat, he thinks maybe she'll lean in, maybe this is it, the line neither of them is supposed to cross. But before it can happen, the moment shatters, the car horn, a shouted greeting, a leaf falling between them. He swallows, adjusts his bag, glances at her one last time. Noticing the way her fingers curl around the strap of her purse, the faint crease of hesitation on her forehead. She drives off. He stays frozen a moment, chest tight, palms itching with the almost, the nearly, the unspoken. The world resumes around him, ordinary, but he knows the moment lingers, unclaimed, unresolved, dangerous in its quiet pull. The evening is cool, streetlights casting thin pools of gold on wet pavement. He walks beside her, shoes slapping lightly against the concrete. Neither says much at first. The kind of silence that presses softly, not awkward but full of small truths. She glances at him, then away, like testing whether he notices the hesitation in her voice. Do you ever feel like people expect you to stay inside your lines? She asks finally. Her tone isn't accusatory. Just tired. He shrugs, pretending casual. Sometimes. Lines are easier to see than the space outside them. She laughs softly, almost to herself, and it's the sound that makes him want to reach out, touch her shoulder, steady her laughter in some impossible way. But he doesn't. Instead, he notices the slight tremor of her hand brushing against her coat pocket. He's aware, too aware, of how close they are. The space between them feels small enough to shrink if he leans. He wants to. He wants to step over the line they've danced around for weeks. He wonders if she wants him to. She stops by a bench under a flickering lamp. Rain from earlier glistens on the seat. She sits slowly, tugging her scarf tighter, and he perches beside her, careful not to touch. His fingers itch to bridge the space, and the quiet tension builds with every second. I worry, she admits, voice barely more than a whisper. About what could happen, if I, her words trail off. He swallows, heart thudding, and doesn't interrupt. He wants her to finish. He imagines a confession, the one they both feel but never speak. His mind runs wild with every scenario, the one where she leans in, the one where he pulls back, the one where nothing is ever the same again. I shouldn't even, she continues, pauses, then exhales, I'm not supposed to care like this. He turns slightly, catches her eyes. The look is raw, exposed. Something fragile, something trembling under the weight of choices unmade. He wants to speak, to say, I know, or me too, but the words stick. His throat tight. His chest tight. A distant car rolls by, and for a moment, the world feels impossibly small, focused on the space between them. He notices how she fiddles with the edge of her scarf, the way her gaze drifts to the puddle at her feet, her expression half hidden but completely open. He leans a fraction closer, almost brushing her shoulder. She doesn't move away. Not yet. The air between them hums with unspoken things, fear, longing, guilt, desire. He imagines the confession spilling from his lips, the one that would make everything dangerous, irreversible. But he only breathes, small, shallow, aware of how delicate this balance is. Finally, she shifts, standing slowly, pulling the scarf tight around her neck, the moment breaking as quietly as it formed. He watches her walk, every step heavy with words unsaid, every glance backward charged with quiet questions. And he realizes, in the hush of the street, that the longing, his and hers, has nowhere to hide anymore. He walks past her apartment one evening, hoping for the familiar glow in the window. Nothing. Curtains drawn tight, no light spilling onto the sidewalk. He hesitates, chest tight, fingers brushing the railing. He leans on, wondering if she's just busy. The next day at the coffee shop, she's there, but distant. Same smile, but clipped. Conversations that once lingered now end abruptly. She laughs, but it doesn't reach her eyes. She orders her drink, folds her napkin carefully, glances at him, and the weight of something unsaid hangs heavier than the coffee steam. He wonders if he did something wrong. Maybe he lingered too long that evening, or said something that crossed an invisible line. The thought gnaws at him, twisting hope into anxiety. Later, he tries to send a message. Just a simple, friendly check-in. But his fingers freeze over the keyboard. Too forward. Too desperate. He deletes it, rewrites it, deletes it again. Hours pass. The screen remains blank. At the grocery store, he spots her laughing at the cashier's joke. A little boy tugs at her hand. She bends down, hair falling forward, smiling tenderly. For a heartbeat, he freezes. Not a friend's child, her son. He didn't know. It hits harder than he expected, the way the world feels suddenly larger, filled with rules and boundaries he hadn't counted. He wants to walk over, say something, anything. But he doesn't. He walks past, hands in his pockets, stomach tight, every step a quiet punishment. That night, he replays every small gesture, every look that lingered too long, every pause in the conversation. He wonders if she ever felt it too, or if it was only him, chasing something that shouldn't exist. He thinks about calling. About knocking. But the apartment is quiet. Her routines are her own. And he feels, more sharply than ever, the edge of guilt slicing through the longing. A text pops up, someone else, a friend checking in, but he ignores it. Instead, he stares at the blank draft, the unsent words forming a weight he can't lift. I miss you sits there, untyped, unsent. Days blur. He starts skipping the cafe, the bookstore, the walks. Everything that used to feel normal now carries a subtle ache, a reminder of what's paused, unresolved. He imagines her, alone in her apartment, thinking about him, or not. Imagines the little boy asking questions she can't answer. Every imagined scenario is sharp, pulling him between hope and despair, curiosity and self-reproach. Finally, he stands outside her building again, phone in hand, chest tight. The door is locked. No light. No movement. The empty space feels louder than any words could be. He breathes, hands shaking slightly, and walks away. The draft remains. The seat she might have claimed is empty. And for the first time in weeks, he feels the weight of his absence, and hers, more than the pull of the almost. He finds her in the small kitchen of her apartment, mid-afternoon light slanting through blinds, dust motes floating in the quiet. She's washing dishes, hands wet, scrubbing slowly. The faint scent of soap and cinnamon lingers, grounding him in the moment. Hey, he says, voice low, careful. She startles slightly, then smiles, not the careful, distant one from before, but a softer, honest smile. He notices the crease near her eyes, the small way she exhales through her nose when she's trying to steady herself. He leans against the counter, watching her hands. I didn't mean to disappear, he says, voice trailing off. She sets the sponge down, dries her hands on a towel, and turns. I wasn't sure you'd come back, she admits, just enough to hear the hesitation in her tone. He shifts, fingers brushing the counter, then his pocket, trying to gather courage. I kept thinking, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it was, too much. Too much. Her eyebrows lift slightly, but there's no judgment. Just curiosity. A quiet invitation to continue. He swallows, feels the weight of all the unsent words, the drafts he deleted, the thoughts he buried. I like being around you. I can't stop thinking about it. About this. His voice falters, and he's aware of every inch between them, the small space filled with possibility and fear. She takes a step closer, not rushing, just closing a fraction of the gap. "This isn't easy for me either," she says softly. Her eyes don't flinch from his. They hold the truth, the risk, the vulnerability he's been aching for. He breathes, heart thudding, imagining the consequences, the judgment, the lines that society draws. He thinks about stepping back, retreating to safety. But something in her look keeps him rooted. Something that says it's worth the risk, worth the quiet ache. "I don't know what comes next," he whispers, almost to himself. She smiles faintly, touches his hand lightly, barely a graze, but it's enough. The contact sends a warmth through him, grounding, human, real. "We'll figure it out," she says. Not loud, not certain, but steady enough to anchor him. He lets himself relax, just slightly, and they stand there in the slanting light, side by side, hands almost touching, the kitchen around them humming softly with ordinary life. No grand declarations. No dramatic confessions. Just presence. He leans his shoulder against hers, not daring more. She tilts her head toward him, brushing a strand of hair back. A quiet understanding passes between them, fragile, imperfect, human. "Okay," he murmurs, letting the word carry all the things he couldn't say. She nods, a small smile, a simple acknowledgement. And for the first time in weeks, the air between them feels alive, balanced, tentative, but theirs. Weeks pass. The coffee shop still smells faintly of burnt sugar, the clock still ticks too loud in the quiet mornings. He shows up around 8:47 a.m., just like before, and she's there, stirring her tea, notebook open but untouched. The routine feels familiar, warm, safe. They don't speak immediately. Just share the space, the small movements, his fingers brushing against the cup, her hand hovering over the rim, a glance that lingers a second too long. Nothing urgent. Nothing theatrical. Just presence. One morning, she brings a thermos of black coffee for him, the lid steaming, hand warm against his. He notices the little crease where her thumb presses the metal, remembers the nights they almost crossed lines, the silences that carried more weight than any words. They walk to the bookstore together, past the cracked pavement and flickering streetlights that had once framed moments of tension, guilt, longing. He jokes about burned toast. She rolls her eyes, laughter soft, real, reaching him without ceremony. The bench by the river is wet from rain, but they sit anyway, coats brushing. No confessions today, no near misses. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that says everything they've survived, all the almosts, all the unsent words, has led here. "You ever think about," he starts, hesitates, but she shakes her head, smiling faintly. He stops mid-thought. Some things don't need saying. Some truths live in shared looks, in the warmth of a hand pressed lightly to another, in ordinary mornings with nothing urgent except being there. Sometimes she laughs at a small disaster, burnt toast, spilled tea, a lost key, and he watches her, realizing he's been waiting for these tiny ordinary moments more than any declaration of love. Their friendship, their closeness, has evolved. He notices the way she remembers his favorite tea, the way she leaves a chair pulled out, waiting. And he notices himself, less hesitant, more grounded, finally letting the weight of past tension dissolve into presence. Evenings are quieter now. They meet on the same bench occasionally, sharing tea and travel mugs, watching the river ripple. No one interrupts, no one judges. Just the faint echo of earlier storms softened into comfort. One day, she leans slightly against him, not seeking anything, not daring more than that small touch. He rests his hand over hers, neither speaking, neither moving. It's a simple acknowledgement, the almosts, the hesitations, the guilt, all survived. They made it to this. He notices the little details, her scarf tucked just so, the way the light hits her hair, the steam from his black coffee curling lazily in the air. And for a moment, he smiles softly, quietly, because this ordinary, fragile, earned closeness, is enough. She glances at him, eyebrows raised in that familiar half-question, half-tease. He returns the look, understanding without words. No promises shouted. No vows whispered. Just the quiet fact that they belong, softly, here, together. And in that moment, he thinks, some loves don't roar. Some just sit beside you in the early morning, hand brushing hand, and that's everything.